everyone, it's Annabelle. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're going to be repotting my Phalaenopsis Samera, who currently has some spikes but is rapidly outgrowing her pot. So I thought this would be a good chance to repot. We're going into spring, she's got lots of new root tips emerging, so this is a perfect time to repot. Although the setup isn't going to change at all, so there shouldn't be any adaptation at all that she has to deal with. She's currently working on a new leaf, as you can see, and the last leaf she produced is significantly bigger than the leaves before that, so I'm hoping that this leaf is going to be a nice monstrous leaf for us. She's currently in a self-watering pot. I got these as a cheap self-watering pot alternative from Amazon. I will link them down below. They have been quite good. They're the type that have the base and then little like cones that go down, so there's like a base but there's no I can't lift an inner out to actually see what's in there. So I also didn't drill flushing holes in this one because I was kind of just experimenting with them a bit. Since doing this, I've started drilling flushing holes into this type of pot because obviously there's no inner that I can take out. They do have the reservoir gauge, which is very valuable. But as you can see, she's been in this pot quite some time. Just get you up a little bit closer. You can see how it's like lifting the lacquer out and it's all kind of just like falling out. So it dries out very quickly as well. So I think that we've got quite a good root system in there. So I'm going to take her out, repot, put her into a bigger pot, which is going to be this one, just larger. Unfortunately, this one is one that I've used previously for Vandas. So it does actually have holes drilled in the side for ventilation. This won't do any harm, but it might be a bit annoying because roots are likely to go through them. I'll probably pop some extra Synthic into this mix to allow for the fact that there's going to be more water loss from the sides potentially, although it is kind of fairly snug fit at the top there, so hopefully not too much water will be lost because it'll be kind of trapped in there. Anyway, we get on with this repot. I've also got two newish orchids, and this is a bit of a funny story. I ordered from an eBay seller in Poland just after Christmas, and two of the orchids that arrived had issues. So the DTPS Purple Martin that I received initially had a spike and it had been shipped wet, so it was starting to rot a little bit. I ended up having to cut the stem. It actually survived though, but the main issue I had was I ordered an Ascocentrum Irene Dobkin Elmhurst, and the first one that I ordered arrived just absolutely infested with mealybugs. I'll pop some pictures up on screen. I was really unhappy. I made a video initially like, don't accept this isn't okay, let's kill these mealybugs, and then I was like, I'm going to contact the seller first and see what they say, because I don't want to name the seller without giving them a fair chance to respond. They don't know who I am. I order from them on eBay under my mum's eBay account, so they have no idea that I do YouTube or anything. So ordered from them, had the issue, contacted them saying I really wasn't happy with the Ascocentrum, and also a potential issue with the DTPS Purple Martin. And she was very apologetic and said she'd send me out some new ones, which never arrived. So I contacted her again like a month or so later saying, did you send them? I haven't received them. Is everything okay? And she said, no, I'm really sorry, I forgot. I'm going to an orchid show soon. I'll get you some and send them out. I think she buys them third party because they come with Schwerter tags. Can't actually get this out because the moss is so tight, but they come with Schwerter tags. This is called Beautiful Orchids in Poland on eBay. And for the most part, they are very good. So she sent me out like no quibbles at all, had to nudge a couple of times, but some replacement plants. The first plant that I got of this, the mealybugs had actually damaged the crown, which is why I had an issue with it. But it has since put out its leaf a little bit more, so I think the growth point of the crown is okay. But the seller didn't query it at all, she just sent me out a replacement. So I'm going to repot these replacements which arrived maybe a month or so ago. I just haven't got round to repotting them. And this one was in spike, as you can see, so I was a little bit like, kind of wanted to see the blooms since it appeared otherwise healthy. I did actually find some mealybugs on it though, so I've killed them, not as bad as the first time. So that seller was pretty good in resolving the issue that I had, which to me, it says more. Like, there can be issues with orchids. I'm not usually that fussy, but the crown damage from the mealybugs was horrific. So we're going to start off with my Phalaenopsis Samera. It's one of my favourite kind of close to species. Obviously she's a primary hybrid between Bellina and Violacea. Most gorgeous flowers ever. So this might be a little bit tricky. I have filled this up literally to the top with water because obviously no drainage holes, so hopefully that will loosen things up for us. Okay, so you can, sorry, let's wait for the leca to stop making noise. You can see she's got quite an extensive root system there, and this one hasn't been repotted since I put her in this pot. So I'm just going to show you front. So you can actually see that there aren't any dead roots. So during the transition to semi-hydro, she didn't actually lose any roots. And I have just spotted a flower spike in there. So she's made 2 flower spikes in my care. She came with this one, which then dried, but I have left because there is a node down here that I was thinking at some point I might try some cakey paste on. But I've just spotted in there another flower spike starting, if it'll focus, just in there. So 3 flower spikes and this half dead one that I'm going to try a cakey paste experiment on. So that'll be probably quite an impressive display this summer. She is technically a summer bloomer, but I tend to get blooms from them starting in spring and finishing in autumn, and they bloom sequentially once they start a spike, and they can just rebloom for ages. So we're going to turn her into this self-watering pot here. Just going to pop some wicks in. See, she's already been in a self-watering system, but any repot can introduce stress. So I think one thing that I don't stress enough is to wait for new root growth before transitioning an orchid to semi-hydro, or just repotting it in general, because I'm quite lax with this rule because I've been doing it a while and I kind of know how the orchids react to semi-hydro in my environment. I don't do it, and I think I don't emphasize it enough in my videos that it's something you should do. It's not really something that you should circumvent until you really know your environment and know how your orchid is going to respond. You should always wait for new root growth, or new, for sympodial orchids, wait for new pseudobulbs and new roots to start before the repot, because the new roots are going to have the best chance at transitioning to a new potting media. Okay, so I've just put some wicks in the bottom of that pot there. And I'm just going to fill the base with leca. It's got quite large drainage holes, so I might have to find some big leca pellets to put in the bottom there. Now that I've put the old leca pellets into that new pot, I'm just going to show you the type of pot that I mean for this old pot. So you can see it has, excuse the mess in there, a base that creates a reservoir. Leca pellets go into these cones, and then obviously that the leca pellets submerged in the water wick up to the ones that aren't. So this type of self-watering pot works absolutely fine for orchids. What I would recommend doing with this kind of cheaper self-watering pot is drilling a couple of drainage holes, flushing holes in the side there, so that you can flush, because this one has been a bit awkward. Obviously I haven't been flushing it at all, but it hasn't been getting any salt buildup really, because she's growing very fast and actively, so it's been fine, but I would recommend not doing that. So I'm just going to position her into the new pot. And I am putting the aerial root into the pot because in my experience they don't die. I wouldn't recommend doing that until you kind of know how they respond in your environment. It's quite contradictory, I know, but just because I'm finding things that are kind of against what other people say, I would just be cautious with how you take that, just because other people obviously have completely different experiences. So take that into account and just make your own decision based on your experiences. Just going to try and get this side a little bit more into the pot. So she's got quite a large root system, so positioning is a little bit, kind of think that I'm happy with that. It's a little bit high, but at the same time I don't really want to squish her in too much, and should be fine. Obviously the way that they grow is very kind of forward, so it doesn't always hurt to have them a little bit higher or leaning slightly back, because they're going to kind of crab forward anyway, so just give them a bit more balance. Okay, so I'm just going to fill around with the new mix, which is going to include some pumice. Okay, so I'm relatively happy with her new potting mix and position in the pot. So just to show you the kind of mix levels. Since she was in full leca before, I've not added too much pumice because she was doing very well. What I have done is put a few synthetic strings through the pot to kind of wick moisture more evenly to the top, since I've noticed that species or closer to species Phalaenopsis do tend to like a little bit more moisture. So I'm going to see how she responds to that, but obviously she's done pretty well just in pure leca, even without a top layer. So I am going to put a little bit of a top layer of just some pebbles to help out a bit, to kind of reduce the really dry top layer that kind of sucks moisture. So I'll just add them onto the top of the pot. Okay, so I've added a top layer of decorative pebbles to the top, which hopefully will just stop the top layer being quite so desiccating. They're not going to do a huge amount with the way I've done them, but hopefully they'll just help a little bit. I think I would need a thicker layer to really be fully effective, but this one seems to have had no problems with leca anyway, so it'll just help retain the moisture in the pot a little bit better, I think. So what I'm going to do now is, after every repot, I take the whole pot to the sink and flush it through. My leca, when I first get it, I rinse it a few times until the water runs clear, and then I just put it into a bowl to soak, similar to this one. So it'll just be soaking in a bowl in tap water. So when I repot with it, I then run it through at the tap just to remove any last kind of residues, and then I run some filtered rainwater, RO water, whatever you want to use. I run low TDS water through the pot and then top the reservoir up with my normal nutrient solution. I'm just going to go do that and clean out the pot, and then we'll top it up with the normal nutrient solution. Okay, so this pot has all been rinsed through. What I'm going to do now is top it up with its normal nutrient solution. So I tend to start off new orchids on a slightly higher seaweed dose. I've got some rainwater here, I've got 1 litre. So I usually follow the dosing pretty much for the rain mix fertiliser, because I find that that gives me a good result. It's usually about 250 ppm, between 200 and 250. So I'm just going to put some rain mix fertiliser in, so it's 1 gram for every 2 litres. So I'm just going to put half a spoonful into the 1 litre. Then going to add some maxi-crop seaweed extract. So with this one, this seedling dose equates to about 30 ppm, between 30 and 40 ppm. So the germinating dose, which is what I usually use, is 10 ml in 9 litres. But for first, I kind of double that. So when I first put an orchid into after a repot or into a new setup, I kind of go for a double dose. So I'm going to do 20 ml in 9 litres, which equates to around 2 ml in 1 litre. I'm not going to be exactly accurate, so I'm just going to grab a pipette and put 2 ml of the seaweed extract into that 1 litre of water. And then I'm just going to pour some into the orchid pot. And then that will get topped up at my regular feed. So when I usually feed, I feed with a lower dose of seaweed, around 30 parts per million, a normal dose of rain mix, so according to manufacturer instructions, which equates to around 200 to 250 parts per million, and also silicon. I think I use that around 30-40 parts per million. I just follow the manufacturer's instructions for soft water. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, that's all I do. So parts per million is obviously relative, so generalizing between fertilizers it's not really accurate. So parts per million is more like an internal thing, or if you're feeding exactly the same solutions as me with the same kind of orchids, but also your environment as well, because I could probably feed higher parts per million when they're in active growth. Maybe yours are in active growth all the time if you're in a hotter environment. Maybe they're not if you're growing them cooler and they're hot growers. They might be taking a break and need less fertiliser. So kind of judge, look at your orchids, see what they need, see what they're telling you. So obviously I've just repotted this and flushed it through, and I've got a little bit of water on some of the leaves. So I'm going to pop this in a warm place with a fan on to dry off, and we're going to move on to the next orchid. If at any point you hear weird snuffling and wonder what it is, it's this little guy here. This is my cat, Muffin. He's a Persian and he's very cute, but also very noisy. So any grunts, snores or weird licking sounds are not me, they are him. He's got a little bit of a cold at the moment as well, so he's a little bit snuffly. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next orchid, and we're going to do the DTPS Purple Martin first. I topped some water up in the bottom of this little container it's been soaking in. So it's been soaking overnight. The moss was pretty crispy dry, to be honest. I've been trying to, while I get around to repotting, keeping it sort of damp and then letting it dry to crispy dry, because I know how tightly packed these Sphagnum moss sleeves can get once the roots are in there. So the last thing I want is to rot it before I get a chance to repot. It seems to be working, so I think that's how the nurseries must keep them. So that's the DTPS Purple Martin, and we're just going to take it out of the pot. For these bowls, I usually line them with a food waste sack. I feel like that's a really good way to do it, because then obviously you can just put the whole thing into compost, obviously plastic removed. Just going to remove the Sphagnum, which is very tightly packed from around this orchid. So that was quick and relatively painless. Got a relatively good root system, not massively extensive, but nothing dead in there. This for me is the ideal kind of stage of plant to get, like a young plant that's just kind of getting to flowering size with a reasonable but not massively extensive root system. Just the repot and adjustment to my environment are so much easier than a massive plant with a massive root system that you have to do stressful repottings on. I'd rather get a plant this size and get it to establish in my environment and get all those roots in my setup. I'm just going to rinse this root system off, then I'll be right back. Root system all rinsed off, and I'll be perfectly honest and say that I've kind of stopped doing hydrogen peroxide sprays for my phals, new phals, unless I see obvious signs of snails, but snails don't tend to go for phals, so I don't tend to do it. Okay, so I'm going to pop this one into one of these pots, just going to drill some holes into the side of it. So put some holes about halfway up the pot. I've started putting my reservoirs higher and higher because in summer I can just fill this up and it'll last like over a week this way, whereas before with low reservoirs they don't last very long and they dry out very quickly. In winter, if you don't need to keep it as topped up, you can always just pour it out. So you can always add another reservoir as well if you've drilled it too high, but I just start off with it as high as possible because you can't undo those holes. Well, maybe with silicone or hot glue, but that's not going to be permanent. I'm just going to fill the bottom of this pot with leca. And something that I've started doing with these, just as a kind of test, because there are so many different ways that you can control the dry top layer, is putting some Synthic down into the reservoir, then like holding that up as I fill around so that I have basically wicks running through the pot even in semi-hydro, and Synthic wicks so efficiently it just helps to keep the moisture really distributed evenly through the pot. So that's another fix that you can try. Synthic isn't available in, it's mainly available in Europe, it's not really available in the US or further afield. So as an alternative you can just use microfiber or the mop head replacements with the fluffy little microfiber strands. Those are ideal, I think. Just going to place the orchid in the pot and then fill around with more leca, pumice and a little bit of Synthic mixed in. Just wanted to show you the root system on the Elmhurst. I've just rinsed it off. The Ascocentrum Irene Dobkin Elmhurst seems to be, or at least the Irene Dobkin cross, slightly tricky one to grow. Both of the ones I've had have not had great root systems. Can you see all the blackened tips where they're trying to enter the media and failing? So it seems like it didn't enjoy being in that Sphagnum media. and the other one was the same. I have seen reports that this cross is a little bit more fussy than some, so we'll see how it does in semi-hydro. My other one is recovering really well from its mealybug attack. You don't think of mealybugs as being that bad, but they'd got right into the crown and just shredded and destroyed it. So just going to pop this one into semi-hydro, same as the DTPS Purple Martin. Okay, so I've flushed these pots through a few times and then emptied out the reservoirs. They've just got a tiny little bit of rainwater left in there, which is fine. It'll just dilute the nutrient solution a bit, but that's absolutely fine. I'm just going to top up with my nutrient solution. Usually I would do this with a jug, but I'm currently out of jugs, so. Something that I've seen people refer to is if you're having difficulty with getting your orchids to adapt to semi-hydro, if the roots are dying off, what you can do is keep it a little bit drier to start with. So just kind of fill the reservoir a bit and then let it dry between waterings, so that the old roots are kind of in an environment that's closer to what they were in before, so they don't necessarily die off or die as quickly. And then when the new roots start, you can resume normal semi-hydro and just keep the reservoir full. But that's something I've heard. I've not tried it out because I don't get root death during transition usually, so it's not a problem for me, but I definitely think that it's something worth considering if you do. Maybe try it out, see what you think, if it helps, and hopefully my Irene Dobkin will continue and open these buds soon so I can show you guys, because it's a beautiful, beautiful cross. Looks like the flowers on this one are going to be a little bit smaller, but obviously the stress for transport. So those are my orchids all repotted today. While they transition, I'll be keeping them in a nice warm place. If you don't have a nice warm environment, then I would pop them onto a heat mat with medium to bright light. Obviously I grow under LEDs, so my orchids always get quite bright light, but without that heat that you get from sunlight. But I do think that having a good light source does help with the transition, but obviously with sunlight it can be extremely bright and hot, which can cause stress, so bear that in mind. Medium, bright, indirect light if you're growing on a windowsill, and somewhere nice and warm. If you don't have that, then preferably a heat mat while they transition. I would say to start with, don't let your phals go below sort of 20 degrees Celsius while they're transitioning. My minimum drops to 18 C at night, sort of 23 to 24 degrees Celsius in the daytime, and if you can kind of keep around those temperatures, I think that that definitely helps with the transition, because obviously leca and any clay media that absorbs water and is porous, or any porous material, will have evaporative cooling effects, which means that it'll stay colder than the surrounding environment because of the active evaporative cooling that's going on. So you really don't want cold, wet, soggy roots while you're transitioning, because that can definitely be a factor in failure, in my opinion. Seaweed as well definitely helps. It's got auxins and cytokinins in, which can help to stimulate new root growth and vegetative growth. So I definitely think that seaweed extract helps. Also a good nutrient source, because they need nutrients as the building blocks to put out new growths, and a good light source will give them energy to kind of keep that going and keep that momentum with all the other things. So those are my kind of top tips for success with transitioning and repotting semi-hydro orchids. Hope you enjoyed this video today. If you did, then don't forget to give it a like or subscribe to my channel for regular orchid updates, and thank you so much for watching. Bye!